Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Frost & Sullivan's Growth Council think tank, Cybersecurity Frameworks for Vehicles, a call to reevaluate your growth plans. My name is Sabrina, and before we begin, I would like to go over a few notes. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the think tank. As always, you can utilize the raise hand feature or the Q&A, so you are welcome to do it. Today's event will be available on demand shortly after we have finished, and we will have a poll question and look forward to your interaction. Now, I want to hand it over to Commercial Vehicles Practice Leader and Growth Expert, Sandeep Sudhakar, who will lead today's think tank.
Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome from Frost & Sullivan and August for you for this think tank on cybersecurity. So I'm Sandeep Sudhakar, and I manage the commercial vehicle practice area in Frost & Sullivan. I have an industry experience of 15 years tracking the commercial vehicle as well as the automotive field, working across OEMs, suppliers, and Tier 1 companies. So here we'll start today with the proceedings with a short context on what is how is cybersecurity relevant for automotive vehicles. So what we see is that automotive industry has been in a state of constant technological evolution. Today, almost like every vehicle has interconnectable technologies ranging from infotainment, driver assistance, and electrical systems. And all these systems rely on sensors, microprocessors, actuators, and communication systems which perform their functions via digital means. And we see a lot of data is digitized, processed, analyzed, and shared among the systems to perform the advanced functionalities, which increases the safety and reliability of vehicles, but they also carry an inherent security risk. So if the data or the code is altered, the digital ecosystem can perform erroneously and lead to catastrophic consequences. So it is in this context, we see that cybersecurity assumes a lot of prime importance going forward in the automotive industry. And today's think tank, we'll touch upon how the automotive cybersecurity is different from the enterprise IT cybersecurity, what encompasses a vehicle cybersecurity throughout the life cycle, impact on the software-defined vehicles, regulations, and finally on the new business models in cybersecurity. And with this, on this think tank, I have with me experts, Noam from August and Sriram from Frost & Sullivan. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Over to you, Noam.
Great, thank you, Sandeep. So hi, everyone. My name is Noam Herzenstein. I'm a Director of Product Marketing with Argus Cybersecurity. We are an automotive cybersecurity software vendor, part of Conti or Continental. Great being here.
Sriram, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Noam. Thank you, Sandeep. So good evening, everyone. So I'm Sriram Venkatraman from Frost & Sullivan, and I do have 15 years of work experience working across passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles. That's it. Over to you, sir. Sandeep, you're on mute.
Yeah. So going into the discussion on cybersecurity think tank, we would like to understand from you, Noam, how is automotive cybersecurity different from enterprise IT cybersecurity, and in what ways?
Well, it's a great place to start because really automotive cybersecurity is you know it's a flavor or a very specific part of the general purpose enterprise IT cybersecurity, but it has very unique characteristics and it's different in quite a few ways. I'll just maybe mention a few, starting with the actual platforms that you have. In a vehicle, the main platform that you have for ECUs today is AUTOSAR, right? It is something that you don't find outside of automotive in the general enterprise space. Also, networks and protocols are there is some overlap, obviously, right? So you would see Ethernet starting to show up in vehicles, but for example, the dominant network within vehicles is the CAN bus. Again, very unique to automotive, different than anything else out there. But maybe I'll mention another angle, beyond the protocols and platforms and so forth, which is the lifespan of the actual devices, right? So if in the enterprises we want to protect, desktops and laptops and mobile phones, right? So how long do you keep your phone, or how long do you keep your laptop, right? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years would usually be considered antique in technology terms for a laptop. Vehicles are different, right? The average lifespan of a vehicle on the road in the United States, for example, is over 12 years, right? In some other markets, it's 15 years. That's the average, right? So you need to maintain and keep protecting this device, right? The vehicle for so many years, which is a very different and more challenging kind of approach than protecting something that you build, and you're going to need to keep protecting for just a few years. So kind of just to summarize, there are all kinds of characteristics that are very unique to automotive cybersecurity that really requires us to use tools and methodologies that are optimized for automotive.
Yeah, great, Noam. So from a mobility standpoint, right, like what do you think about how a typical vehicle cybersecurity should look like when it comes to the multiple layers and the vehicle design, right? How the typical vehicle cybersecurity should look like?
Well, yeah, you mentioned layers, and this is very true. And unfortunately, there is not a single place or a single protection that you can apply to vehicles and get enough protection, the required protection. So we have to take this multi-layer approach, and I'll give some examples, right? So if we look on board, right, inside the vehicles, we have those computer networks I mentioned, right? Ethernet, CAN bus. So we would like to start by protecting the networks, deploying intrusion detection, firewalls to protect the networks, typically in critical areas like the gateways or switches and so forth. So this is the network. Now, the next step is to add another protection to individual ECUs, right? Now, you usually don't need to protect all of the ECUs separately. That might be an overkill, but specific hosts, very critical, important hosts, such as the infotainment system or the telematic ECU, etc., you want to consider applying specific host, intrusion detection to those hosts as well, right? And in addition to that, encryption, authenticating messages between the different nodes in the vehicle. So all of these that I just mentioned are just on board the vehicle. Now we also need to look to kind of take a broader approach, for example, by thinking about vulnerabilities. We want to do vulnerability management. We have to do it because the regulation requires it. And vulnerability management is something typically you do kind of off-board. You take some kind of a digital twin of all the assets in the vehicle, and you look for vulnerabilities. And this is an ongoing, this is a continuous process, because you have to start it when you design the vehicle, then through the production of the vehicle, and then maybe for 15 years or more while the vehicle is on the road. You need to keep doing it. And maybe finally, another very important aspect is if we kind of zoom out now from a single vehicle and we think about the entire fleet of vehicles, maybe we have 1 million vehicles, from an OEM standpoint, monitoring the entire fleet, typically using something we call the Vehicle Security Operations Center that is connecting to all those vehicles. Obviously, they need to be connected. Getting all this telematic data and other sensor data in order to look for anomalies, look for things that might look kind of suspicious, signs of attack, risks, and vulnerabilities, etc. So that would kind of be a typical way to, or a comprehensive way to implement vehicle cybersecurity.
Perfect, Norm. At this point of time, I would like, Sabrina, can you launch the poll question for the audience?
Yes, sure. The poll question is, what are your current main priorities, focus areas for automotive cybersecurity? You can choose all that apply, in vehicles intrusion detection solutions, or in vehicle firewall, or in-vehicle encryption or other authentication solutions, for ECU communications, vehicles vulnerability management, or vehicle security operations center for connected fleet monitoring, setting up an organizational cybersecurity management system, and vehicle table approval. And the last one, threat analysis and risk management assessment. Sorry. We will have it for a minute if you want, and then I will share the results.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we have tied. So people choose setting up an organizational cybersecurity management system, vehicle type approval, and threat analysis and risk assessment.
So, Noam, do you want to comment on that? Is it in line with the industry thought process?
Yes, definitely, and it's really also very driven by the regulation out there. Maybe we'll say a few words about regulation later, but it's really something that the players are really concerned about, right? Both OEMs, suppliers need to set up those cybersecurity management systems. Those are like processes, but they also need to kind of test and approve and certify every vehicle type. So there is a lot of activity going on these days that are tied to all this, meeting those requirements.
Yeah, perfect. Noam. So, Noam, what we see is like recently trending topic in the automotive space is the software-defined vehicles, where we see a lot of OEMs as well as the tier one suppliers moving towards software-defined vehicles. And how do you see the impact of software-defined vehicles on cybersecurity, and how important is vehicle cybersecurity for these platform of software-defined vehicles?
Well, it's really important to understand what is a software-defined vehicle, and I can tell from my own experience, if I ask five individuals to define a software-defined vehicle, I'm probably going to get 5 different answers, sometimes even 7. But really, I think most of us would kind of agree that a software-defined vehicle, not only that we have this separation between the software and the hardware, and a lot of the functionality of the vehicle and different features of the vehicle are now coded in the software. But in addition to that, right, the software-defined vehicle means that you can update the software, just like you get updates, right, from your mobile phone, get pushed updates. There's a new version, and suddenly you have even though it's the same phone that you bought maybe last year or earlier than that, it's the same hardware, but suddenly we have new features because new software was pushed to us and we upgraded it. Same goes to the software-defined vehicle. So, we mentioned before, we're going to have like 12, 15 years, maybe more of that vehicle on the road. There are going to be a lot of software update and changes in the vehicle, and add to that a lot of connectivity. Right? It's also another aspect of the software-defined vehicle, right? So we have Wi-Fi and we have Bluetooth connectivity. We are connecting devices in the vehicle. The vehicle itself is communicating with the OEM, right? With the OEM back end, using cell communication typically. So there's a lot of potential vectors, attack vectors. So the risk when we are now kind of handling software-defined vehicle, which is a great kind of progress, right? That it's almost like reinventing the whole vehicle. But this also comes with those challenges, because now we have a lot of potential risk, a lot of places where we can have vulnerabilities. And even if everything is okay right now, and there are theoretically not a single vulnerability in the software, which is a very, very hard to say in general, we're still going to have new software being pushed to us in the future, which again might introduce new vulnerabilities. So it's an ongoing process. So the more software we have now loaded in vehicles, and we're talking about, by the way, hundreds of millions of lines of code in a modern vehicle, and the autonomous vehicles would have even more than that. So really, the potential risk for cybersecurity kind of attacks, and the implications of that is increasing, which of course means that we really need to take the cybersecurity very seriously.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Noam. I totally agree with whatever you said. Okay. We also noticed that, okay, in September, right, which is actually last month, there were actually more than 500 plus ransomware attacks across multiple industries, and mobility with its extended ecosystem was not an exception. Okay, we found Opcom and the other. We also found the Opcom ransomware attack, which is pertinent to mobility. Okay, so with all these ransomware attacks and other kind of attacks, right? What do you think about the automotive regulations? What are the key trends that you see towards the automotive regulations across multiple geographies?
Well, it's important first to kind of distinguish between regulation and industry standards, because we have both. So by industry standards, think probably the most notable one would be the ISO 21434, which is international automotive cybersecurity standard. Standards on their own are not binding, right? They are kind of voluntary. They are state-of-the-art, best practices documents. Of course, nobody can really ignore them, even in markets where you don't have regulation. For example, in the States, in North America, you still don't have formal regulation, as opposed to, for example, Europe. But you do have those industry standards and some other best practices guidelines out there, and nobody can really ignore them, because if something happens, even from a liability standpoint, if something happened and liability comes into play, you don't want to be in a position where you didn't really meet the industry standards. But again, those standards on their own are kind of voluntary. But then we have the regulations, the actual mandatory regulation. The most important today in the world is the UNR 155, which already applies in all the member states, which are all the European countries, but also some additional member states, Japan and others, which really mandates what OEMs and suppliers have to do in order to meet those requirements. So this is already in effect in quite a few countries, and we see that regulation coming up in additional markets. There is the GBT regulation coming up in China. It's a little bit down the road in terms of the dates, but it's coming, and various kind of versions of the UNR 55 is going to be adopted in lots of other markets. So eventually, it's just a matter of time, but eventually we will have one kind of regulation or the other covering pretty much all the markets, and in conjunction with the industry standards, which, by the way, some of the regulation is referencing the industry standards, such as the ISO 21434, which indirectly makes those standards part of the regulation and mandatory. So the direction is very, very clear. The regulation is just going to be increase in scope, and sometimes it starts a little more kind of high level, and with time it's becoming more specific. And we're going to see that pretty much in all the markets eventually.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Noam, on that. Because what we see is, like, with the trucking ecosystem becoming more and more digital, there are a lot of interfaces between different participants, which is highly vulnerable for cybersecurity threats and attacks. And on this note, I would like to also understand from you, what is the industry readiness to meet the cybersecurity regulation? Because you have touched very well upon the standards and the regulations and how it is placed globally. But is the industry ready to meet these cybersecurity regulations? And when do you see that industry will be ready, and your thoughts on the same?
Well, again, we need to distinguish between countries that already are subject to regulation, like Europe, Japan, and others, versus the regions and countries that are still not subject to that. But having said that, there's a lot of work being done. Everybody's kind of struggling to meet those requirements. What we see from our experience, with our customers, is that the large players, the large OEMs and large suppliers are doing better. right? Even if they don't have all the resources that they need in-house, but they have some internal domain expertise for cybersecurity, and they have a plan in place how to meet the requirements. And as you go kind of down to mid-sized companies, you see that they are more challenged. And once you look at really the small players, the EV startups, the small suppliers, they are really sometimes struggling because they don't have internal, or many times they don't have internal cybersecurity resources. They are focusing on building a great automotive product, but they, at the same time, they have to meet all those requirements. Actually, what we did a few months back, just to kind of check it in a more empirical way, we commissioned a survey of 200 individuals, half of them from small OEMs and half of them from small suppliers, right? We wanted to check really the maturity in that segment of the market. And there are some very interesting insights out of this survey. By the way, if anyone is interested, you can download this from the Argus website. Maybe I'll just mention a couple of insights that we got from there. We asked them, are you ready for the next regulatory deadline, the UNR 155? The next deadline is July 2024, which is something all the member state has to be subject for and meet. And this is less than a year from now, and in automotive terms, it's right around the corner. 58% of the small automotive manufacturers, and both OEMs and small suppliers, said they are not ready to meet the requirements. We did this a few months back, so it's fairly recent. And we also asked them, when you are designing your automotive products, are you already designing them fully with cybersecurity in mind? And the result was that 53% said yes, they are designing their automotive products with cybersecurity in mind, which means, of course, that 47% are not yet there, right? Some of them are partially designing it with cybersecurity in mind, but not fully. Some of them are less than that. But we see that there is a lot of there is some sense of urgency, again, driven mostly by regulation, but not only, for everybody to kind of come on board and meet those requirements.
Yes. On this note, I would probably launch the second poll question. Sabrina, can you please launch it for the audience?
Yes, sure. The poll question is, what is your organizational readiness today to meet automotive cybersecurity requirements, whatever regularity or industry standards? We can choose from not ready or not concrete plan to get there, not ready, but we have a plan in place, partially ready, still addressing remembering gaps for full compliance, and fully compliant and ready today. Wait 20 more seconds to close it when it gets to 1 minute. And then I will share the results. Okay, for now we have 100% for not ready and no concrete plan to get there.
Yes, this is the situation for several players. Of course, not everybody, right? And again, in markets where there is no mandatory regulation yet, then you have a little bit more flexibility. But I think the trend is very clear, and the sense of urgency is increasing.
Yeah. On this note, Noam, do you see like the government subsidies or probably a strict regulation from government mandating cybersecurity would help adoption of cybersecurity? Because that is the way we see in the automotive industry. Because if you take the case of emission standards, it was initially government made it probably voluntary for people to adopt these standards. But now when the people were not adopting it, they brought in some strict regulations as well as subsidies. So you have the carrot and the stick approach. Do you see a similar approach would help in the cybersecurity front also?
Yes, definitely. You can see that in quite a few countries that are already subject to regulation, you can see that everybody is struggling to get it done, because for example, by July 2024, right, next year, all the countries in Europe, Japan, etc., that are subject to UNR 155, the OEMs will not be allowed to put a car on the road unless it meets the regulation, right? So I don't know if I don't think they are not there in terms of fines like we have for the CO2 emission and so forth. So fines are not yet part of the game, as far as I know. But you see that this is a major driver, and this is also, by the way, something that we checked in our survey. It's a major driver for investing in cybersecurity, the fact that you have regulation. But maybe I'll add one more thought. It's interesting that when we looked, we did this survey in multiple markets, obviously, including some markets where an important market where you don't have regulation, such as North America. And you could assume that there would be less readiness for cybersecurity in North America just because there is no regulation. And it was quite interesting to see the result that there is not less investment in cybersecurity in North America, again, even though there's no regulation there. Of course, there could be several reasons for that. A lot of the OEMs are global OEMs, right? So if they sell in markets in China or in Japan or in Europe where you have regulation, that they will need to meet it anyway. So they can't avoid this effort. So that's one impact. But I think also everybody understand, regulation or not, understand that you have to meet those industry standards. So the short answer is yes. I think that the more regulation you'll have, the adoption will increase. It will be faster. But everybody is going there anyway, sooner or later.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. On this note, it was very interesting to know about new vehicle cybersecurity from your norm. But what about the vehicles already on the road? How do you see a solution for the big vehicle park which is already existing on the road? And how do you see cybersecurity being implemented because is it going to be like an automotive retrofit solution, something like that? Or how do you suggest a solution for that?
So this is a very interesting angle, because all the work being done today, all the requirements coming from regulation really applies to new vehicles, right? So we are starting to embed, intrusion detection and firewalls and all kind of protections in new vehicles. The regulation also requires it. But this doesn't really help all the other vehicles that are already on the road, right? And there are at least tens of millions, maybe even more than that, of vehicles on the road today with some level of connectivity that have been manufactured in the past 10 years or even more. Right? Connected vehicles are out there, right? You might think, oh, connectivity is something for the future. It will come with autonomous vehicles, or maybe it's now, but it's coming only with new vehicles. But it's not really the case, right? You could buy a Jeep 10 years ago and get connectivity and get an app that can control some of the activities in some of the functions in the vehicle, right? And the vehicle would communicate telematics back to the OEM. So what do we do with all those huge amount of vehicles on the road, right? The regulation is not addressing it. So that's a challenge for us as an industry, but at the same time, it's really an opportunity because there are ways that we can add at least some level of support for and protection for those vehicles as well. Maybe I'll touch on two approaches or two examples. One is to set up this vehicle security operations center and monitor the fleet from remote, right? We're talking about vehicles, obviously, that have some level of connectivity. And then we can. It's not perfect. It's not the full support that you have when you already have also have embedded cybersecurity in the vehicle. But at least it gives you some level of protection, right? And we can look at a fleet of 1 million vehicles, for example, or any other number, and look for anomalies, and look for signs of attack, or look for things that shouldn't happen the way they are, and take corrective actions, and respond to those risks or to those attacks. So connecting those vehicles on the road to a security operations center is one way to provide support, at least some level of support. And something that you alluded to, another way to actually add additional support on board is such as an aftermarket kind of device that you can install under the hood of a vehicle on the road to protect the network inside the vehicle, to maybe to add authentication, to make sure that the messages that are being sent from the different ECUs to each other are authenticated, or that the ECUs themselves are legit, authenticated, and nobody is trying to hack into the system. So there is, I think, in my opinion, a major opportunity here, again, for us as an industry to provide more support and more protection to vehicles on the road.
Thank you, Noam. So how do you think OEMs will be handling cybersecurity? Whether will they do it in-house, or will they use third-party specialist companies? So can you just give your thoughts on that?
It's actually both, right? So if you have, if you think of those, I guess, uncommon examples such as Tesla, right? An OEM like Tesla, and they like to make everything on their own, to create this vertical integration approach, similar to Apple, where they would like to produce as much as possible on their own. So companies like that would try to do as much as they can on their own, cybersecurity-wise as well. But I think this is more of an extreme example. And the majority of the players out there, right? The majority of the OEMs and the suppliers out there have to find a way to handle it. Some of them are trying. Sometimes they are acquiring like a startup or a small cybersecurity vendor, so they have in-house resources, or some of them have some level of in-house cybersecurity domain expertise. But really, the majority of them, this is what we see, are, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? There are tools out there from vendors such as ourselves at Argus and other vendors, with technologies, right? With intrusion detection and prevention, with firewalls, with vulnerability management, with security operations center solutions. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There is a lot of, so this is kind of technology-wise. There's also kind of I would say the services-wise, or the consulting aspect of it. There's a lot of work being done by everyone, like we discussed, to meet the regulation, right? You have to certify that, for example, an OEM as an organization, that they have a cybersecurity management system. It's not a product. It's a set of policies and processes. It's a framework, right? But you have to get certified. The regulation mandates that you do it, and then every vehicle type that you do a vehicle type approval, you also have to approve the cybersecurity measures to see that. So there is a lot of work to be done here: testing, penetration testing, and getting ready to meet the regulation. And again, there is a lot of vendors that can provide this support. So we see this mix. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So, Noam, like when a new technology comes into the market, there'll be business model defined around that. Like if you take the case of autonomous trucks, earlier when trucking was a product-based business where the OEM would just sell the truck as a product and then probably stay back where the other participants in the ecosystem take care of it. But with the launch of autonomous or electric trucks, we see that OEMs are not only stopping it is more of a truck has a product is transformed into a service where the OEM has to take care of the recharging, it has to take care of the fuel, it has to take care of the maintenance. So it is an allied business model for the new technologies like autonomous and electrification of trucks. So in this context, how do you see the new business models evolving in the automotive cybersecurity? Do you want to touch upon 3-4 areas and give us some nice examples of the evolving business models in the automotive cybersecurity?
Sure. So we already mentioned kind of the aftermarket, this which is kind of an opportunity that we have out there. Again, that there's not a lot of activity going on there, but there's definitely an opportunity. But you do see different types of business models and ways to handle it, even monetize it. Investment in cybersecurity. So, for example, if you think about insurance companies, right? Insurance companies, and this is early in the process, but insurance companies are starting to look at offering insurance policies, right? A new product, right? Insurance policy to protect against cybersecurity, damages, right? Liability. Now, insurance companies are in the business of evaluating risk. The challenge here is that today, if you are an insurance company, how can you tell if you have two different models of a vehicle, right? How can you tell that the first one has extreme protection, cybersecurity protection, and the second one has little to none, right? It's very difficult for an outsider like an insurance company to actually evaluate that, right? So it's just a matter of time until the industry will come up with a standard way to score the cybersecurity posture, right? The level of cybersecurity protection of particular vehicle type, right? Just like we have it for crash testing, right? Like the NCAP, where we could say this vehicle is a 5-star protection versus crashes, and this vehicle is only 4 stars, and so forth. We will have something similar and say the cyber protection level of this vehicle is 5 stars, and this other vehicle is only 3 stars, and so forth. And this will allow new players such as insurance companies to really offer new products such as those insurance policies. But by the way, they can either offer them to OEMs and a completely different way, offer them directly to the drivers, to the car owners, same as they are buying the regular accident insurance. They can buy insurance against cybersecurity damage. So insurance is one direction that you can think of.
An analogy to the insurance is also like probably when we consider the recent adoption of ADAS in trucks. Now, a lot of insurance companies are trying to probably rate the fleets which are adopting latest ADAS technologies and reduce the insurance premiums. So this can be even a motivator for more adoption of latest technology. So probably if you see a truck fleet company adopting cybersecurity processes in place, they can reduce the insurance premium because you are reduced to the cyber hackers threat. So that can in a way motivate the market.
Absolutely. The whole point is that they need to know that they can offer a better, a lower premium, right, or a discount for something that with a lower risk, something that is more protected versus something that is very risky, which they don't want to insure at all, or at least they would have a very high premium to take care of the risk that they are taking. So absolutely. And actually, if you think about other types of fleets, right? Obviously, right, when we are tracking fleets, we mentioned the Security Operations Center from an OEM standpoint, right? The OEM needs to monitor the fleet for various reasons, but of course now also for cybersecurity because the regulation says so. But there are some other types of fleets. So if you think about rental car companies, for example, right? They're not the OEMs. They don't need to worry about protecting the fleet, but they have some other worries, right? So maybe fraud, right? If I'm renting a car from Hertz or Avis or any rental car company, and I'm renting it for personal use, for example, the contract says I'm not allowed to use it for commercial use. Now, maybe I'm trying to commit fraud, renting the vehicle and then using it to drive people in a commercial way. I'm going to be an Uber driver, for example. This is a loss for the rental car company, right? Because they would have charged me a lot more if I wanted to rent the company for commercial use. So in order for them to protect from this fraud use case, they need to be able to monitor the entire fleet and look for cases where somebody, the driving behavior of someone just picking up passengers and dropping them constantly all day long. This is not a typical personal use. This looks more like a commercial use, for example. But it's not just fraud. There are some other use cases rental companies can think about. Predictive maintenance, or any fleet managers, right? Or enforcing even rules. So you mentioned commercial trucks, for example, right? Usually you have some kind of guidelines or even regulation that says that a truck driver is not allowed to drive more than X amount of hours a day, right? Because maybe after 8 hours you get tired and then the risk of an accident increases, right? Maybe some drivers are cheating. Maybe they are driving way more hours than they are allowed to, which is really a liability issue for the truck company, for the fleet, right? So enforcing those rules. So if you monitor the entire fleet and you can see that you have those violations, you have an opportunity to take care of this problem immediately, rather than just hoping something bad won't happen. So different types of use cases where fleet managers, rental car companies, ride-sharing companies, or any types of companies like that have a fleet of vehicles, like shipping companies and so forth, can leverage that. And there are direct cybersecurity aspects and sometimes indirect cybersecurity aspects that can be part of it. So those can be new business models and new kind of to generate value by providing those insights and this protection to those fleets.
So, Noam, can you also touch upon the generative AI business models for cybersecurity, because that's a very trending topic?
Yes, absolutely. But I would say it's a very early days for using Gen AI in vehicles. There are several players, several OEMs already experimenting with it. And the use cases some of the use cases are kind of back end use cases, not consumer facing. Some of them are consumer facing. Also, I'll give a couple of examples for the back end. Supply chain, for example, if you don't want to do inventory management, right, risk mitigation, or in the manufacturing process itself, right, the production improvement, product design, quality control. During all those phases, there are now experiments of injecting Gen AI functionality for those employees of say the OEM, to increase their productivity. But I think the more interesting use cases are the consumer facing. So think about retail. And by the way, by retail could be the actual old school dealership, right? You go to a dealership and you have this screen that you can interact with, right? And so this can be a kind of a sales situation. It can also be an after-sales situation. I want to come in for service or for maintenance or maybe to upgrade something. But it can also be in the metaverse, right? So you have some kind of a retail presence in the metaverse. It's really early days for all those things. Some OEMs are even kind of experimenting in vehicle. And this is very interesting. I think Mercedes-Benz is one of the pioneers. And they integrated ChatGPT into their voice assistance system within the vehicle, and this is really interesting and cool. It's part of the user experience. It's part of the car owner user experience when they are in the vehicle. So everybody's experimenting with those use cases, and I'm sure there will be new use cases that we are not even thinking about yet. This is not directly related to cybersecurity, but definitely indirectly when you are integrating, such a service that relies on external servers, right? And you are sharing data between the the user or the vehicle and this external service. You have to take the cybersecurity considerations in mind. Privacy is a major issue here, of course. So there's a lot of data going on about the driving behavior. There are cameras and microphones in the vehicle. You're always connecting your mobile phone, right? So your entire digital life potentially is exposed. is connected now. And once you introduce Gen AI, definitely you need to make sure that privacy-wise and other aspects of cybersecurity are handled.
Yes, no. That was very elaborate on the business models for cybersecurity now. So I think the audience would have really enjoyed from the think tank, because we had covered elaborately on the various aspects of cybersecurity, ranging from vehicle cybersecurity, the regulations, the standards, the business models, and how do you see the industry readiness for cybersecurity regulations. On this note, I would probably pass it on to Sabrina for the next poll question.
Thank you, Saidi. Okay, I will launch the last poll question, and is: can Frost & Sullivan be your transformation partner? You can talk to our experts to dive deeper into transformational strategies and explore specific needs within your company. Also, you can become a Frost growth expert in your area of specialization and share your expertise and passion with the community through our think tanks. Also, you can join Frost & Sullivan's Growth Council and gain access to think tanks focused on transformational growth strategies. And finally, you are able to designate your company as a company to action to increase exposure to investors, new M&A opportunities, and other growth prospects for your business. I will leave it open for a few minutes so everyone can be able to answer. So thank you. Saidip, over to you now.
Yeah. So thanks for all the participants for attending this cybersecurity webinar, and the on-demand view will be available shortly for all the registered participants. Thanks, Nom. Thanks, Sriram, for a wonderful event today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.